I was born in Coburn, Virginia, which is in Wise County, where my grandfather was the treasurer of Wise County, a Democrat. My mom met John F. Kennedy in 1960 when he came to the region while he was campaigning for president. The Harry F. Byrd Machine, or the Harry F. Byrd Organization as it was called, from the early 1900s and all the way up until about 1969, the Democrats had a real stronghold on Virginia. And you had two kind of groups going. You had the counties, rural, and you had the cities, who were urban, and they had different levels and different types of fraud that they would perpetrate during an election. And what they'd usually do is they'd have to wait until the election results were pretty much counted, and then they could look into the pool of absentee ballots and see how many they needed, and then they could sort of make up the difference and then make sure that their candidate won. And that happened on both sides. But there was one case in 1945 in a Democratic primary in particular where the guy running was declared the winner, and they went and looked to see what happened. And in Wise County there was 3,500 votes thereabouts for the person who was declared the winner, and only a couple hundred for the challenger. So they said, well, that looks like a pretty big winning margin, and again, you suspect fraud, so you go, inquiring. So when they went to investigate, the election officials in Wise County said that somebody had stolen all the voter records. So they disqualified Wise County from the totals, and the opposite person won as a result. In 2006, there was an election in Appalachia, and there was over 1,000 indictments handed down in terms of I think about 14 people. And after all the smoke had cleared, they found that people were buying votes for pork rinds, cigarettes, and 6 packs of beer. And they were able to convict the mayor, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The way that a rural political machine works is that you just get the constitutional officials, your sheriff, your Commonwealth attorney, your court clerk, commissioner of revenue, and your treasurer. And they just work together, and they make a pact, and then they go ahead and just control the assets and the artifacts, and they run the county in a way that they can determine who wins. If you get a network of those going around the state, you have what was called the Byrd Machine, or the Byrd Organization, that determined who was going to be governor of Virginia. And the Democrats dominated up until Linwood Holton won his election in the late 1960s. It's interesting that the Byrd Machine is known and notorious for basically controlling who was in statewide office, because their machine was powerful. And actually, Harry F. Byrd became a governor at one point in the 1920s. Election fraud and having political machines has been part of the fabric of our nation, and people need to understand that. If we fast forward to today and people say, well, these were the safest elections in history, and make claims that they couldn't possibly know because there's so many moving parts that they couldn't have checked out to really see if anybody had tampered with anything. Without investigating, these claims were being made, and a narrative was put on the American people. It just wasn't so. There's another quote I like to use by John F. Kennedy, and it was, the enemy of the truth isn't the lie, which is dishonest and contrived and deliberate, but it's the myth, which is appealing and persistent but unrealistic.